to you. Thanks, Mariam. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. So today's panel is on the Alaska Lawn Trail, and I'm going to make a short introduction to the Alaska Lawn Trail concept and then introduce our speakers for today. So I'm going to share screen. Let's see. Yep. Presentation. Can you see my PowerPoint? Excellent. So yeah, the Alaska Lawn Trail concept came from the work of the Alaska Trails Initiative, and the Alaska Trails Initiative is a project of Alaska Trails, and it is a coalition of partners and stakeholders around the state who want to see improvements in outdoor recreation infrastructure to bring more investments for trails and outdoor recreation, and see outdoor recreation economy grow in the state. So the Alaska Trails Initiative, as I said, is a coalition of partners. The recent product of the coalition is the statewide trails investment strategy that was produced in 2020. And that product is available on our website. It was a working with partners. We along the 5 regions that you can see on this map and the Southeast. The coalition pulled together over 50 projects that were deemed to be high priority, high return on investment, shovel-ready or approaching shovel-ready along the rail belt in these 5 regions along the rail belt and in the Southeast. So they after this document was pulled together, the investment strategy, a few of us looked at the map, and with a little bit of imagination, you can see that you can take a few existing segments of the trail and piece them together to create a continuous trail from Seward to Fairbanks. And that is the current concept of the Lawn Trail. And why Fairbanks to Seward, the 500-mile trail? So a few reasons for why this concept is, we think, is viable and feasible. We already have the momentum and landowner support. As I mentioned, this work came from the partnerships of the Alaska Trails Initiative in 2020, and the trail goes, as you can see, along the rail belt, along the road system. So the trail would be passing through communities. There would be economic impact for trail towns along the trail. The trail segments, some portions of the trail already exist. About 20% of the trail is already on the ground. So the costs of building the new segments and piecing together this continuous trail are pretty manageable. Well, we hope so, compared to building a trail somewhere in the wilderness away from the road system, for example. There's the trail concept. The proposed trail route is wild, but not too wild. It has this Goldilocks factor. So it's not, again, it's close to towns, close to means of transportation. So it's not as daunting as a trail in somewhere away in the bushes and the wilderness. So there's a wow factor. The trail would go through spectacular country, through mountains, alpine areas, and the rivers and trails, rivers and lakes along the way. There are options for braided routes and flexible use and multi-season use as well. So there are many reasons why this trail route in particular is gathering a lot of momentum and support. So this map shows the proposed route, and in red are the existing segments already on the ground, and in blue are the segments that still need to be planned and thought about and figured out. So the blue it's a conceptual trail route, but work still needs to happen to figure out the exact locations of the segments. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of support and enthusiasm. The concept, the Alaska Lawn Trail concept in this particular shape and form is only about 1 year old, but we already seen a lot of support and enthusiasm for this concept from municipalities, from communities, and various organizations. Curiously, I think it was interesting that a couple of Anchorage mayoral candidates included the Lawn Trail in their platform for election. Didn't help them to win the election, but it was interesting nonetheless. There's a lot of attention in the media. We have given interviews for radio programs. A lot of newspaper articles have been written about the Lawn Trail around the state and nationally as well. For example, in Sierra Magazine, it was featured this year. There's a lot of volunteer interest. We receive volunteer expressions of interest on a weekly basis, and people expressing their interest to help us with different skill sets offered. So between GIS, mapping, and grant writing, and ground truth and segments, once segments are planned out. Governor Dunleavy showed his support for the trail initially when he introduced his general obligation bond in February of 2021, and included $13.2 million for the Lawn Trail projects. And state legislature, killed the bond, but recognized the value of the Lawn Trail projects and included the Lawn Trail projects in its capital budget in the summer of 2021. Subsequently, Governor Dunleavy vetoed those projects along with other items in the capital budget as a consequence, as a side effect of struggles over PFD amounts. So we don't have the state funding for the Lawn Trail at the moment, and we'll hear today from Senator Begich about the situation in the state legislature and possibilities of funding possibly for the Lawn Trail in the future. We have support from the Lawn Trail concept is also supported by the congressional delegation, and in particular by Senator Murkowski's team and Senator Murkowski herself. She introduced legislation to start a feasibility study to designate the Alaska Lawn Trail as a national scenic trail. So, and we'll hear from her staff, Carly Bash, later today about that, about the status of that designation and that vision. And finally, here on the slide, I'll talk a little bit about the funding we got from Rasmussen Foundation for initial phases of the Lawn Trail planning. It's a tier 1 grant of $25,000. It's not going to be enough for constructing the many miles of trail, but it's a necessary first step to start the planning process. And here, I also want to mention that support for the trail is bipartisan, and we see a lot of support. Again, the state legislature approved the Lawn Trail projects for its capital budget, so that was a good sign. But you can see many organizations and towns that passed resolutions of support and expressed their support for the Lawn Trail over the past year. So we've tested the ground, we've tested the concept. We see that the idea is gaining a lot of momentum. We see a lot of support. So now what? The question is, what are the next steps? And this is where we get into the in-depth, nitty-gritty work on planning and thinking through the trail. So there's some key questions that still need to be answered. In terms of the full trail, we need to answer, we still need to come to a finalized version of vision and mission for the trail among the many partners that are working on the trail, as well as the name. Right now, the Alaska Lawn Trail is a placeholder. We need to have something more exciting and hopefully questions of use and seasonality and need to be answered as well as organizational structure. How is the trail going to be worked on, which organizations, what are the levels of engagements need to happen. And for regional segments, for those 5 regions that I showed on the map earlier, between Seward and Fairbanks, work needs to happen in the regions on route planning, working with communities and partners and stakeholders and land managers to figure out what are the viable, feasible route segments that can be part of the trail in their regions. And along with that, work needs to happen on securing easements, rights of ways, permits for the trail segments, and of course, securing funding for construction and maintenance need to happen as well. So it's a lot of work, right? A lot of meetings probably ahead of us. So the next steps, as I mentioned, we need to bring together regional working groups in the 5 regions that you can see on this map. They're pretty, well, they're not precise, but it gives you an idea where the regions we have in mind are. So this work, the regional working groups of planning and route mapping, we envision it to happen in winter of 2022. So this coming winter, we recognize that it's a long process, so it might not happen fully over the course of the next few months. It's an ongoing work, but this work will start this winter. And hopefully by next summer, there will be some segments that have been selected by these regional working groups for folks to be able to ground truth and check out. And I would like to make an invitation for anybody on this call to reach out to us if you're interested in helping in your region, if you're part of one of these 5 regions or maybe more, and if you want to be part of these groups who will be working on thinking through the routes, through securing easements, and working with communities to think about how the Lawn Trail would look like in your region. I will post a link in the chat to this form that you can see the address here on the bottom. This form the link will take you to a Google form, and it's a very simple form that will ask you for your email and your name and the region you're interested in participating. And that would be great if you're interested in being part of this effort. The agenda for today is, so we'll have presentations from partners from all the 5 regions along the proposed Lawn Trail route. And they will talk about their vision, the possibilities of segments in their regions for the Lawn Trail. And then we'll hear from Senator Tom Begich about possibilities of funding from the state legislature in near future or maybe far away future. And then we'll finish up with a presentation from Carly Bash from Senator Murkowski's team on the National Scenic Trail designation process for the Lawn Trail. And with that, I'd like to pass the mic to our first presenter, and that will be Wes Hoskins. Is Wes here? Yeah, and Wes will also touch on the need for the shared mission and vision statement and broader picture, broader vision for the trail as well. Let me stop share screen here, just a second. Oops. There we go. And let me give a little introduction to Wes. Wes is the executive director of the Mat-Su Trails and Parks Foundation. And let's see. He has been serving in the nonprofit sector since 2008. And since moving to Alaska in 2013, he has had the great fortune to work in big and small development and philanthropy shops while pursuing his dream of leading a small but impactful organization. He founded that calling with the Mat-Su Trails and Parks Foundation, and he hopes to help the Mat-Su become a world-class outdoor recreation hub that drives a robust and sustainable local economy and provides healthy, fulfilled lives for all of his neighbors. Thank you, Wes. And or yours. Would you like me to share screen for you? Or
yeah, if you want to share it, I don't have too many slides, so I think that just might be easiest. Thanks, Miriam. Well, while Miriam is doing that, I do want to make sure that everybody else gets enough time. Yeah, I'm Wes with the Mat-Su Trails and Parks Foundation, and very happy to be working with the partner groups in the Mat-Su segment. And did want to talk a little bit about the mission and vision idea. This is something that I've had conversations with Chris and Miriam and the team in other meetings, and thinking about it, this campaign it's basically like flying an airplane, and thinking of like the Alaskan bush pilot as a symbol of independence and freedom. But a pilot taking off on the most hummocky tundra still needs stable ground from which to begin flight. And I really believe that a shared mission that identifies who we are and where we're going should be agreed on so that we have firm ground from which to fly. Additionally, a vision that captures what outdoor recreation in Alaska will be after the Long Trail is built will be key. Last year, my organization, board and staff, recrafted our mission to be better aligned with our current work. And it's not going to be an easy or a quick process, especially for the Long Trail dream. And I think how collaborative we're just really going to need to be to make this thing happen. But I think it'll help steer us in the same direction and provide a guide when we're having complex and sometimes hard conversations within our respective communities. It will serve as a bank of runway lights to show the way. And so Miriam already put up the link, and I think her and the AK Trails team will follow up with those interested in getting involved in the different working groups, and hopefully especially being a part of the mission and vision creation. If you want to go through to the next slide, Miriam. One more slide, Miriam. All right, overarching vision, and this is, again, my preliminary take. We've had a few meetings specifically for local stakeholders and land managers from Alaska State Parks and the borough and Fish and Game representing Palmer Hay Flats, but by no means, have we done all of the work in the communities that we need to do. But the Alaska Long Trail and the Mat-Su, it's going to be an economic driver for the region, providing benefits to many types of users, both residents and visitors. A McDowell consultancy group study on tourism infrastructure needs said that a strategic $1 million investment in new infrastructure in the valley for outdoor recreation items like trailheads, bathrooms, trail construction would bring about possibly 12,000 new room nights, 12,000 to 24,000 annually, with new visitor spending being estimated between $2 to $4 million annually. So this trail, beyond just being a 500-mile length through the state, will also create direct and indirect opportunities for people in the valley. And while the analogy doesn't necessarily work, it's not anatomically correct, but I really think of the trail as an artery with veins that can come off of it, smaller trails and connections that are existing and not existing yet. You could advance to the next slide, Miriam. This is a real rough map talking about some prospective segments, but the Long Trail in the Mat-Su could begin at the handoff point from the Anchorage segment around Mirror Lake, well, one idea is that there's a part where it could travel through Eklutna and then up and over the Traverse Trail down to Pioneer, the Pioneer Peak Trail, and then out on the Old Glen, using existing right-of-way and existing infrastructure. Another idea is to just go right up the gut on the what in this slide is a green segment, and going up on the Glen, possibly through Palmer Hayflats land, and then going through the Palmer Core. One segment would have it go through, connect into Palmer Fishhook, and then over to Government Peak Recreation Area, and then travel over the trail that will be built soon, the GPRA to 16-mile segment, part of the Ski Talk Summer Trails Complex, which Trails and Parks Foundation just provided a grant for a multi-use trail out there. So the Long Trail will create other opportunities, and not just that segment, not just that alignment. An option is to then from Hatcher Pass go through the high country of Hatcher Pass, or alternatively, it could maybe traverse more of the toe of the Talkeetnas, have to cross the mighty Susitna, and then end up connecting into Denali State Park, hopefully to the Curry Ridge and then the Kasugi Ridge Trail, using those infrastructure investments, and then from there up to Healy. It's a new trail in the high country or a braided trail along the park's right of way. Again, that's a real broad snapshot. The blue idea is that could be a multi-use winter segment that rolls through Wasilla, ties into Big Lake, and then uses the hundreds of trails that are west of the park's highway. You could forward the slide, Miriam. This map illustrates the challenge and the opportunity of finding existing trails and rights of way. It's a good indicator of just how many different roads, official trail designations. I think to get this done, it's really going to be using new and existing infrastructure. You could advance, Miriam. And of course, the Long Trail is going to create new connections, new trails and infrastructure built off of the Long Trail, access to new adventures for many different users, many different takeoff points and portals that are going to the communities, like Talkeetna, farther north. I think that there is a lot of opportunity there if we do it right. And I could also speak to the slide up there that's hard to see, is that is the ski talk trails that are going to be built out. Those trails, along with the GPRA to 16-mile connector, which connects GPRA to Hatcher Pass, that'll end up being a world-class system of trails. And then that's another thing that I really love about the Long Trail concept, is that this can create an overarching goal. Us as when we're making grants out to applicants, one of our major criteria is connectivity. And connectivity, when thinking about the Long Trail, creates those new hub and spoke connections, and helps to make it think of a master plan system. You could forward over, Miriam. And of course, there's still a lot of work to do in the community at the local level with users, neighborhoods, governments, and working within the existing plans, the borough plans, city plans. I think needs to be a lot of outreach in the future with our stakeholders, but really looking forward to it. You could forward over, Miriam. Well, thank you for hearing my preliminary sketch of the Mat-Su segment. Please stay in touch, and I know I will be on hand to answer any more questions you all have.
Thank you, Wes. Yeah, I'd like to invite, we'll go to Fairbanks, to Bryant Wright. Let's see, give an introduction to Bryant. Bryant is a trails coordinator for the Fairbanks North Star Borough Parks and Recreation Department. Bryant earned his Master's of Science in Natural Resources Management at the University of Fairbanks, and he serves on the board of Alaska Trails. He's a board member, and also the Alaska State Parks Outdoor Recreation Trails and Parks Advisory Board. Bryant is dedicated to getting the Fairbanks community outdoors to explore and have fun. Bryant grew up in Fairbanks and in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And he enjoys running and skiing the local trails and exploring Alaska's backcountry.
Thanks, Mariam. All right.
Would you like me to share your screen or?
Yeah, if I can share screen here, I'll start a presentation. Great. Okay, so I'll just run through the Fairbanks connection. So again, we're trying to have a Fairbanks terminus in the north connecting to Nenana. So that's kind of the segment that we're interested in here. On the left side of the screen, you can see a road. That's the Parks Highway following the ridge. I'll try and guide my cursor over here. Yeah, so that's our goal is again, following roughly the Parks Highway from Nenana to Fairbanks, and hoping for several options in Fairbanks, depending on the season or type of mode of travel, motorized or non-motorized, and ending at a spectacular location at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. So we've got a few highlights here with the north options. We can end at the University of Alaska. That's kind of a hub for our trail systems in town. You can see the green and the green and white trails throughout this map. Those are indicative of our local trail plan. So you can see that a lot of our established local trails are connecting to this red route, this Alaska Long Trail route. And the university is kind of a great launch off point for many of the local trails in town. One of the highest, most visible trails in our town is the Equinox Marathon, and it starts and ends at the University of Alaska. So they're a great partner for getting our community out, and we thought it'd be a good terminus for this concept. A few options in here for people traversing the potential long trail. In this loop here is our Equinox Marathon Trail. You could take either of the legs of the Equinox Marathon Trail and then continue beyond that along this ridge line and kind of traverse the ridges of Esther Dome, continuing on through the neighborhoods along the old Nenana Highway and connecting in here to the Rosie Creek, Bonanza Creek Forest. This is state forest land. And they've been a great partner so far, helping us understand how we can use the trails and routes through this active forestry area, how they can better partner to provide recreation and resource extraction there, maintaining their forestry operation, but also maintaining the recreation values that we hold for their trails. And so this is kind of the high route, the ridge route that we'd like to see people enjoying in the summer, getting them up and over Esther Dome, a very spectacular place for our town, kind of our nearest high point to get great views around town and of the surrounding open space. And so a few concepts on Esther Dome would take you up over the high ridge, or we've got kind of a south face route that we are looking into partnering with Alaska DNR and Mental Health Trust to obtain some easements here to construct a trail along that face. And then, so that's one of the proposed sections that we're still trying to evaluate and work with landowner partners. And we've got another proposed section here along Old Nenana where there's some existing trail, many gaps in the trail. And so we'll have to work with other landowners in that area to identify the most appropriate routes. So yeah, overall, we've got this nice high route here. And then there's a low option. Again, many of the trails in our existing trail systems connect to these existing trails. So here is our Iceberg Recreation Area, and that's kind of formed the hub for this connection, where you could be coming from Nenana through the Rosy Creek forests and then connect into our Burrow Park, our Iceberg Recreation Area, and through some trail easements south of Esther and along Chena Ridge, connecting back into the local pedestrian transportation facilities, sidewalks and such that could get you to the university or even beyond to downtown Fairbanks. Just some nice photos to give you a bit of context if you're not familiar with these trails and the kinds of views you'd encounter. Esther Dome again is kind of the high point that looms over town. Definitely a major destination for recreation locally. Great views, some nice tours and outcroppings, and a very popular race for, of course, the views and the challenge that the vertical topography of Esther Dome provides us. So we're pretty excited about getting more people up there and attracting people from out of state and from other parts of the state to get these views. And then in Iceberg Recreation Area, we're making quite a bit of progress helping visitors get through this rec area. We just finished one phase of an RTP grant to harden this trail. It's a fairly wet area, so we were pleased to get that grant. And then we've also been awarded a second phase to continue construction here. So trying to make a really robust, durable trail for all seasons and all uses. This is built as a multi-use trail to accommodate ATVs and snow machines in the winter as well. So we are making progress. We're working on these connections, trying to get ahead of the game and build access for options for this Alaska Long Trail. And then, of course, the terminus that we are most excited about here is getting people to the university campus. A lot of attractions there that bring people from across the state and across the world to see what's going on campus. And the museum is kind of a great showcase of the kinds of research and cultural interests and art and artifacts that we house here. So it's a great place to end. And just recently, we've grabbed from the Stampede Road, the Healy area, the Into the Wild bus. So another great attraction that's being housed at the museum that should draw some of the kind of clientele that we're hoping to get on this long trail. And of course, just lingering around campus are the world-class ski trail systems that are also excellent in the summer. So a few highlights of the Fairbanks area and our trail systems and how the long trail might connect people to those. I'm pretty excited about it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bryant. I want to invite everybody on this call to write your questions in the chat if you have questions for the presenters. We're running a little bit behind time, so I am not inviting open questions through the microphone. So if you maybe we'll have time in the end for audio questions. But if you have anything to say or comment on, please write in the chat. And I would like to invite the next speaker. Let's go to Denali Borough with Teresa Floberg. Teresa is is a community development administrative aide at Denali Borough. And she started recently with the borough, and she plunged right into this trails work and the lawn trail process. So thank you, Teresa. And would you like me to share screen for you?
You know, let me give it a shot. May not be the best time for me to give this a go for the first time, but I think I can get this. All right. All right, Mariam, is that working? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So for the Denali portion of the Long Trail, I really liked what Mariam said about it being, you know, the whole project in general, but for Denali, a viable concept. The Denali region doesn't have a current comprehensive trails plan yet, but in fiscal year 19, an outdoor recreation budget line was added for the first time. And there's already been some exciting things that have been happening. The layout of the Denali Borough as an overview, the blue line is the borough's boundary. The red line is Denali National Park's boundary. Infrastructure that's already in place, not specifically trails, but pretty significant corridors of the Parks Highway, the railroad, the Nenana River, and the Intertie. Denali obviously also has a very well-established visitor season. Healy is a small town just about 11 miles north of the park's entrance that has a grocery store now, viable option for resupply. And then there is, of course, Denali National Park as a destination. So one of the things I have not done on this presentation is draw a line on the map for proposed trail routes. The reason being that, again, Denali Borough is hoping to undertake a comprehensive trails plan process starting in 2022, but currently one does not exist. And so what I've done here on this map is show land ownership, focusing Cantwell to just north of Healy. A few things that do exist that'll help the Long Trail through this area are bridges over the Nenana River, which would be a significant hurdle otherwise. There's one that exists north of the, north of the park's entrance, right? What people would refer to as Glitter Gulch or the canyon. There's one slated to be constructed over the Nenana down in McKinley Village at mile 231 down in here. Healy itself is also doing some improvements to our spur road that leads back to the river. And then the pedestrian environmental linkage study has a separated path identified all along the Parks Highway as a project that does have energy and support behind it. One of the things that Denali Borough is currently undertaking and has funding for is to construct a trail on Antler Ridge, which is just north of the wilderness part of the park here that leaves the highway right about here. But the purpose for sharing the land ownership map here is just to paint a picture of not necessarily a hurdle, but just to give a clear picture of the type of lands we'd be traveling through on this long trail. The orange color is Atna Native Corporation land. On the west side is Denali National Park. The darker green here is designated wilderness. The lighter green is still parkland, just not designated wilderness. Dark blue is Denali Borough land dotted throughout the corridor, and then yellow is the railroad, and then there's Mental Health Trust as well. So there's quite a few different partners to be working with this process. So when you talk about the different options, as a quick summary of where it could go, the Parks Highway corridor is, a realistic route in some senses. There's infrastructure there already. However, one of the biggest challenges is the canyon, the Nenana River Canyon, just north of Glitter Gulch, right up in here. It is a significant challenge to build anything through there. And the Pell DOT has noted that a separated path would be upwards of $37 million just to get from the parks to Healy. On the west side of the highway, you have Denali National Park, which is, a destination in and of itself. But again, even though there is established trail, the Triple Lakes Trail heads up along this section to the park's entrance, and then Mount Healy does cover part of this right here, but it's not fully connected and it is in designated wilderness. One exciting conversation that is happening right now is a concept for a Nenana River Trail that would be leave McKinley Village. Excuse me, my cursor's not behaving. Leave McKinley Village and travel in the non-wilderness area of the park on the east side of the highway here. There is also the option of where the intertie goes and where some of the mapping was done for the LNG is on the east side of the highway. But the disadvantage of that following the ridge on the east is that you do miss the national park. So that is just a quick overview of the region and land ownership. And then this is just a fun map of that Antler Ridge that I pointed out shortly that we're going to be starting construction on hopefully in the near future. That does connect to close to the north boundary of the park down back to the Parks Highway just south of Healy. So there is a lot of energy and support behind the idea of a separated path or a trail through this area, especially if it's multi-use. Residents have always wanted a bike trail to connect the communities, and that's been a focus for us, being able to connect these communities in more ways than just the highway. In the tourism world, you hear a lot of talk about the idea of trying to get visitors to spend one more day in Denali, to not come just for the bus tour, but other attractions that get people in the area and also to all the communities along the highway. And then again, renoting the, some of the bigger players involved in who we'd be working with to access these different land segments. There's already been some exciting work done this year that covers a lot of these same topics with the SCORP, and then also with the Build Back Better Regional Challenge. The Denali Gateway Corridor was in one of those proposals. So there's been a lot of discussions yet this year about routes and opportunities through this area. So that's what I have. And you're not taking questions, Mariam, correct? Anything you wanted to input?
Yeah, maybe not at this point, but if people have questions, please write them in the chat. Okay. We'll address them if we have time at the end.
All right. Well, I will give the screen back to you. Sure.
Thank you. And I would like to go to Anchorage now. We have two regions left, Anchorage and Kenai. So Anchorage is, we'll start with Beth Nordland.
Hi,
Beth is the executive director of Anchorage Park Foundation, and she's a lifelong Alaskan, and she has served as the executive director since Anchorage Park Foundation inception in 2004. Thank you, Beth, for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, I think maybe Chris Beck wants to share his screen, wanted to do a map, but hi. I think it was last year the Anchorage Park Foundation did a presentation on the Moose Loop. And we are excited to say that our Moose Loop is launched. Excellent recreation cities have loops around their cities or great trail systems that loop up. About 4 years ago, our board met for a strategic planning session and started talking about where they wanted to be in 10 years. And they decided that they want to be connected to Palmer and they want to be connected to Seward, and they want to connect neighborhoods to recreation areas and neighborhoods to the moose and neighborhoods to our wild spaces. So in these conversations about connectivity inside of Anchorage, we are also having conversations about being a destination city where, again, the one more day situation, if there was something that visitors could do, they could stay longer and spend a lot more resources in our town. Interesting times during COVID, we found that independent traveler dollar was very strong. So hopefully that made some good messages this year. And, you know, I think you'll all, it will resonate with everyone on the call when I say, it's interesting because it's no one's actual job to connect up all the trails. We have found that we're trying to do some advocacy and it's no one's raison d'etre to get this work done. So, but we're excited with the federal infrastructure bill and the potential next bill, and garnering resources and being part of the Alaska Long Trail for Anchorage will help us connect to our other cities and connect to our wild spaces. So we're very excited to be on the team and do any of the advocacy that we need to do with our own voters and with our delegation, both in Washington, D.C. and with our legislators from Anchorage. And look forward to hearing from Tom Begich soon. I think Chris has a few other things he'd like to say.
Yes, Chris, would you like to do a little presentation as well?
So just quick, just sort of building on and adding maybe a few details to what Beth said. And it's been definitely great to have the Park Foundation as a sort of a driving force in all this discussion about the Long Trail in Anchorage. But so the notion of the Long Trail, like we've been hearing from other folks, Teresa and Bryant and Wes, is obviously still evolving, but I think there's a little bit more of a framework to start from here. So just going south from north, kind of what's in hand. Let me get this so it will advance. Coming in from the south, and I'm not going to go foot by foot through this, but there's the existing southern trek of the Iditarod. There's a section that needs to be constructed up 20 Mile. That's not an insignificant piece, but it takes you into the Crow Creek Trail. And from there, there's a couple of options. One is to stay up in the Chugach State Park, and then the other one is to work along the coastline. And as the images down here show, it's just a bunch of beautiful terrain. There's a possibility too of coming in and connecting through the Arctic to Indian, which is a spectacular winter route. So that's kind of starting to get at what Beth is describing, is how to link Anchorage to points south. And much of that area is already there. This bird to Gird piece is now bird to Indian, but there's a gap right in here. And the Department of Transportation is doing some studies on that. It looked like it wasn't going to be possible to fill that gap, but maybe that study is being revisited. So it's something that's of great importance to have. It's filling the tiny space between two existing trails. I'll go quick. So Beth touched on, we have this amazingly popular, the Moose, the route that turns out to connect a bunch of existing trails. And the notion coming in from the south, here's Potter March, is connect up into the Moose, take you through Kincaid. There's a great popular trail, the Coastal Trail. There's a little tiny piece, another little gap that connects from the end of the Coastal Trail onto the Ship Creek Trail. And then that sets you up to continue ultimately, as this says down here, to Muldoon, to Eagle River, and onto Mirror Lake. This is the place where the greater challenges lie. This is the southern end of the Crow Pass Trail, Eagle River Visitor Center. There's a wandering sort of mountaineer's path that takes you to Klutna, and another one that could take you back into the end of the road that goes up here and to perhaps go around through the old bridge on the Old Glen Highway. But I think the theme, as you're hearing from all this, is that this is probably a braided route. There's probably a hiking trail up in the mountains, and a walking, bike, and skiing trail down through town, and giving people using this the chance to use sections or all of it, a lot of choices. The piece that's the biggest challenge is the need to figure out how to get through the complicated physical environment and the land ownership up at the north end. Right now, there is a trail from Anchorage, a little bit of road right near Muldoon, but through Ship Creek, up along the Glen Highway, all the way to Mirror Lake. And so there's a process just beginning that the Park Foundation, other folks in the Anchorage area are all working on to do some form of a design feasibility study. And we were able to meet, courtesy of the work that Diana and Beth had done, to set up a meeting with Ryan Anderson at the Department of Transportation a week and a half ago. And I think they're sincere in their interest in seeing the value in all this. So there's your rapid flyover, some great opportunities. I think the level of interest is really high. And so thanks for the chance to share. And I'll pass it back to you, Mariam. Unless Beth or Diana, did you want to fill in some key dumb thing I said just then? You're on mute. There you go.
Well, I guess I'll just reiterate, some of these projects are not at all shovel ready. So we have a lot of work to do, but good to be part of the dream, and it's good to have long-term goals. And then sometimes when federal money makes itself available, you know, you can get projects done. So also Eklutna is an area that's not connected by trail, the native village of Eklutna. And you know, it does seem sadly ironic. So we're interested in getting connected, you know, all the way to Palmer and up to Fairbanks.
Thanks, Beth.
Chris, thank you, Beth. And I didn't have an opportunity to introduce Chris. Chris Beck is the Alaska Trails Initiative Program Coordinator, and he is a planner with many decades of experience in Alaska. And he is the one of the people credited with the concept for Alaska, the Alaska Lawn Trail, in the shape and form it is now. We'll go to Kenai region right now with Tim Sharnern. That's our fifth and last region for the Alaska Lawn Trail. Let's see, hold on just a second. Tim Sharnern is a district ranger for the U.S. Forest Service on the Glacier Ranger District of the Chugach National Forest. Glacier Ranger District trails provide outstanding recreation experiences on the Trail of Blue Ice in Portage Valley, the Whistle Stop Backcountry Trail System, and the Iditarod National Historic Trail, and connects communities of Girdwood, Whittier, and Portage. Team has been working on these key trail connections for the last 20 years. All right. Thank you, Tim, for being here. And would you like me to share screen?
Yeah, anytime you are ready, Miriam. I think we just have one slide. It gives a general overview of the trail section on the southernmost portion of the long trail, and that's the Kenai section. That what you have up now is there we go. If you could scroll down maybe just a little bit or make that bigger. Perfect. Thanks, Miriam. While you're getting that set, I just wanted to, it's a great segue when you mentioned that Chris Beck. We can thank him for the current version of the Alaska Lawn Trail Vision. I remember when Chris shared that with me a couple of years ago, and he went into his a pitch about this trail that would connect and all the agencies that would be involved with that and the benefits involved with that. And a little bit like the movie. Chris, you had me at hello. You didn't have to sell me on that at all, because we were fortunate to have a little bit of a head start on a project that tied in just perfectly with the vision of the Long Trail. And that's our work on the National Historic Iditarod Trail System. And those guidelines for us, that vision that Wes described so well about having the runway lights out, those runway lights were set out for us in 1978. It was the National Trails Act that was passed that year that designated the Iditarod National Historic Trail from Seward to Nome as a national historic trail, our first nationally designated trail system in Alaska. BLM was identified as the lead agency for developing a comprehensive management plan for that system. And as Teresa mentioned, in Denali, as they're still trying to get that comprehensive management plan going, we're lucky that on the southern trek, we have that in place. We have a comprehensive guiding document, and that was created in 1986. It identified a number of agencies, including the BLM, the Forest Service, a number of municipal agencies, and the state of Alaska, including the Chugach State Park, as cooperating agencies in the reestablishment of the southern trek of the Iditarod Trail System. So the vision for that trail system is about 180 miles of trail, connecting some key South Central Alaskan communities: Seward, Moose Pass, Portage, Whittier, Girdwood, and Eagle River are all along this southern trek of the Iditarod. And so beginning in the late 80s and early 90s, we established the route. We know what section has been designated as the Iditarod, and we've been able to guide investments, trail investments towards that vision of a completed trail between Seward and Eagle River. I think Wes also said it really, really well on kind of expressing the need for a guiding document for the Long Trail. And these type of coordination centers are very important for us to make progress on that guiding document and answering the questions that Miriam put out about location, agencies involved, responsibilities. That will be so helpful for our collaborative efforts in the years ahead, because it is hard interagency work. And but the benefit of doing that is by having those documents in place, by having that vision supported by multiple agencies, it really helps in having those hard conversations about locations and easements. It helps in negotiating on segments of trail for funding, and it helps our respective agencies invest and prioritize in something that's beneficial, not just to our own respective agencies, but to our partners. It's so evident to me, working on the Iditarod trail system for the last 20 years, how important it is to be able to leverage support from our partners. And just two key examples of that where we've had just great success the last couple of years. And that's in working with the state of Alaska and the Federal Highways agency on some of the highway projects happening on the Kenai Peninsula. One being the Sterling Highway, the second being the Seward Highway. As we worked with State of Alaska DOT on their needs for Sterling Highway reroute and relocation of the Portage Curve section of the Seward Highway, we were able to identify, kind of going back to our comprehensive plan for the Iditarod, some key opportunities to connect segments of the Iditarod Trail system. That being a bridge, a very expensive bridge needed across Snow River, and some very key bridges in the Portage Curve area of the Seward Highway, connecting the Iditarod Trail system between 20 Mile and Turnagain Pass. Those bridge segments were identified and negotiated with the state and incorporated into the highway planning portions of those highway projects. And so as you're going down the highway this winter between Anchorage and the peninsula, and you start to see the pilings going in along the 20 Mile River, think about key trail connections that those bridges are going to provide on this system. Those are multi-million-dollar investments that would not have happened without an interagency, without a comprehensive approach towards trail planning and trail investment. So that's a very key concept that I think again that Wes highlighted so well. This afternoon, I'll identify or highlight some of the other key investments the Forest Service has made and our partners have made on the trail itself. But I just want to thank Chris and others for the vision, and really looking forward again of offering the Southern Trek as a key component on the Long Trail vision. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you for highlighting the importance of collaboration between agencies. It's key to the success of the Long Trail, for sure. And I would like to switch gears from highlighting the projects along the Long Trail from the 5 regions of the Long Trail to an update from Senator Begich from Juneau. Senator Begich he's a lifelong Alaskan, and he has been the senator for District J in Anchorage since 2017. He is the leader of Democratic minority in the Senate. And we would like to thank you for being here, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to present today. Really appreciating you being here.
Thank you, Mayam, and I'm glad to be here and to give you just a quick update, and I'll try to get you back on schedule a little bit. I'll try to be very fast, but I do want to call out just a couple, loved hearing from Chris and Beth and from the folks up north as well as knowing what's going on down on the Kenai. It's just exciting to me that we're still moving forward, even though there have been obstacles throughout the process. For those of you who may not be aware of it, we did actually manage on the Senate side to get the Long Trail in the budget. And let me just do a little bit of background. The governor had originally put it in his general obligation bond. So we had all the segments, some $12-15 million, substantial amount of money was in the GEO bond, what's called the general obligation bond. That bill never moved. So what Senator Wielechowski, myself, and Senator Gray Jackson, LV Gray Jackson, did was we asked that our priority for the caucus would be that we would put the Long Trail funding, all of it, in our requests for the Senate side of the budget. Now, for those who don't know this, and I know there's roughly 50 folks online right now, in the process of doing that, we spent a long time talking with Director Gies, Ricky Gies, who I think is online, and was really tremendously useful and helpful in our process of trying to figure out how to do this. And so I wanted to be sure to do a shout out to him. What we were able to do is convince the Senate majority and it took some heavy negotiation, but to get that into the budget, and it was kept in the budget process. So we did get full funding of the Long Trail that was similar to the funding that had been in the GEO bond, and some additional money for some parks planning and parks office funding that we think was necessary. The problem is that we had originally had that money tagged to the American Recovery, the ARPA money, of which we had $500 million in this budget cycle. We have $500 million remaining. But in the last minutes, it got shifted to a different funding source, a general fund funding source. So that's the money that we generally have in the budget that comes from tax revenue, oil revenue, and other revenue sources for the state, as opposed to federal funding. When it came to the governor vetoed that funding. He vetoed the entire amount, even though it had been in his original general obligation bond bill. Part of the reason given was the funding source being the non-federal money. So with that, we sat down with the Senate Finance Committee majority members and our minority members, and we worked out an understanding that this would be one of our priorities, one of our highest priorities for the coming year. And we have strong assurances from the Senate majority that we'll be able to put this in as part of our base budget coming out of the Senate. So what my guess is that we'll use some of the remaining ARPA funds. There's $500 million left that has to be allocated. Some portion of that will be used to fund those segments of the Long Trail, and we're fairly confident we're going to get it. So I want you to know that. It's not a promise, because promises mean nothing in this process. But what's been helpful, believe it or not, has been the passage of the Biden, now I guess the number is 3.4 billion and change. There's some hundreds of millions in additional money that we'll be accessing as well. But that infrastructure money takes pressure off of how ARPA funds that we already had in the bank will be spent, and it takes pressure off the state general fund. All of that is very, very helpful in our efforts to move forward with this comprehensive world-class tourism project. And so I think that you should rest assured that it's going to be a priority of certainly the Senate minority. It appears to be a priority of the Senate Majority Finance Committee members as well, because of what happened last year, or I guess I should say earlier this year. And nothing seems to have changed even through 4 special sessions in that commitment from the Senate Majority Finance Committee members. So I'm encouraged by that. I'm very, very confident that we'll be able to move forward with it. I would just add that there'll come a moment when we'll reach out to folks to support this effort. And Ricky, I know you're online, and so I just want to say, as the governor's writing his budget, which is due December 15th, I hope that the Long Trail's in the budget to start with, because that makes it a lot easier if it's actually in the budget, and even designated to ARPA funds. That'd be fine. We'll do our part to make sure it stays there if it's already in there. And it's a good collaboration. Want to make sure that it happens. So that's where we're at right now. And certainly if there are any questions about that, I'm happy to answer them. I know you're behind time, but I think I cut my time by about 10 minutes. So that should help bring you back up to speed. So any questions I could ansor really quick?
Senator, if I could just say thanks for the shout out. And they were asking for requests for ARPA funds and stuff. So through state parks, we do have sections, at least we were limited to the sections on our lands. But we do have we had put forward $70 million worth of ideas for ARPA funds moving forward, which was revenue replacements. There's trailheads, parking lots, boat launches, trails in and of themselves, easements. We've been talking a lot about the Long Trail. A lot of these sections need easements, and sometimes that trips us up. So we want to do forward funding for easements. So there's a lot of different options there that we put forward for the governor to choose from.
Director, if you could do me the favor of just when you have permission, I know that there's a moment, but when you have permission from the governor's office, let us know what those are, because there may be some synergies we can follow up then.
Sure, we'll do.
I would appreciate doing that. And also shout out to Rob Earl. I thought I saw him online too. He's a longtime friend and ally. And any other questions I might answer?
I know we're trying to keep some time for Carly and general questions, but would you offer a bullet point or two on, as we collectively work with the governor's office and legislature, about which arguments seem to get the most traction, and maybe how you ended up with these funds in the ultimately not approved capital budget?
Well, I guess the number one bullet point is it's a world-class tourist attraction, and that has been the number one point. This is something that's good for business, period. This is, as Alaska diversifies its economy, developing our unique destination tourism objects, I guess, for want of a better word, has made this that has made it very important. That's what takes it to the top. Talking about it in terms of a trail system or talking about it in terms of the Iditarod is nowhere near, and I respect all of that. But what the governor's office seemed to respond most to was the impact it would have on tourism. Alaska in many ways is a domestic end destination. It's a domestic foreign destination. This adds that Appalachian Trail element to it, the Pacific Coast Trail element to it. For people who want to get the trifecta, we're the third one, and come get the Long Trail as well. And that's what we think is the biggest selling point. Getting it into the budget, that's not a talking point you can use. Quite frankly, Chris, that was a matter of hard negotiation. You want our vote? Put the Long Trail in the budget. That's raw politics. So,
Yeah.
And I intend on practicing that same level of politics this time. So,
well, we sure appreciate all you did. I know that it was not a slam dunk. So thanks much, Tom.
it was not.
Thank you, Senator Begich. We will probably have a couple of, Beth, you would like to, we have one or 2 minutes for another question. How about that? No?
Beth was just waving, longtime friend.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay. So I think we'll have, hopefully we'll have a few minutes at the end for more questions. And I'd like to give the floor to Carly Besh. Carly is a lifelong Alaskan who grew up in the Anchorage area. She has served in Senator Murkowski's office for 3 years now and is a legislative aide working on the environmental and outdoor recreation issues. Prior to working with Senator Murkowski, Carly worked with Skiku, is that how I pronounce it? Skiku, a nonprofit dedicated to getting youth out cross-country skiing in rural Alaska. And she holds a bachelor's degree in environmental studies from Franklin University, Switzerland. And when not out sweltering in the DC heat, you can find her hiking along Jernigan Arm in the summer or backcountry skiing along the Tin Can trees in the winter. Thank you, Carly, for being here today.
Thank you. And I promise to keep this quick to keep us on schedule, but I just wanted to provide a quick update on the Alaska Trails Act. As most of you know, Senator Murkowski introduced the Alaska Trails Act on April 22nd of this year, and it was referred to the Energy and Natural Resource Committee. Most of you know that this is a two-part bill. So the first section is the designation of the Chilkoot Trail as a National Historic Trail. And then the second section is to direct the Bureau of Land Management to conduct a feasibility study on the designation of the Alaska Long Trail as a National Scenic Trail. So just a brief update on that. On June 23rd, the ENR, the Natural Resource Committee, held a hearing on this bill, and the legislation's now still remaining in committee. And basically right now we're just awaiting a markup for this to pass it out onto the floor. So we're continuing to work with all of our federal partners and stakeholders on refining any and perfecting any bill language in that. And then we hope to have it marked up by the end of this year. My colleague, Aaron Thiel, he'll be giving an update a little bit later today on the infrastructure funding and other congressionally directed spending requests. I'll also be leaving my email if anybody had any additional questions on this bill.
Thank you so much, Carly. Does anybody have questions for Carly, since we do have, 15 minutes left now for questions about National Scenic Designation for the proposed Alaska Lawn Trail.
Carly, what's the timeline for then, what happens after the markup? When might this bill be heard and passed out of committee? Can you just give us a sketch on the timeline as you might envision it right now?
Yeah, so as I said, we're hoping for markup by December, and then that will go on the floor possibly. So there's no real defined timeline on this, but we're hoping to get it out. Generally, these smaller types of trail bills get attached to larger packages. So we're hoping to attach this onto a larger lands package later this year. So your guess is as good as mine for when it finally goes out, but we're working on it.
So Carly, I want to just say thanks, how much we appreciate you and the Senator's office for the forward progress on this. And then maybe you'd slightly elaborate on my sense of how everything we've been describing in the earlier part of this meeting fits into the feasibility process. Because in effect, Alaska Trails and all the partners who've been presenting today are really, the pioneers. They're the folks sort of taking off down the trail, getting this started. And then the hope and expectation is that that can be meshed with what the federal agency, Bureau of Land Management, might be doing so that we can do it effectively and do it as quickly as possible. I guess maybe that's am I thinking right about all that question?
No, you are exactly. So what you're doing on the groundwork is just really going to help with the feasibility study going forward, because we need the on the ground stakeholder input, and getting a consensus on this will just be beneficial to expediting the whole process.
This is Ricky. One of the things I heard from various user groups in different parts of the state is, the Alaska difference in this trail maybe from other trails, in that it's not going to be just one trail, but multiple strands through multiple agencies with multiple modes of use, whether it's classic hiking trails versus motorized trails versus bikes, and incorporating marine components to this trail. Is there anything in the federal designation in this, when we look at the feasibility, that narrows the scope just kind of down to a classic hiking trail? Because I wouldn't want that. We want to be open in our designation, but we also, what I was talking about is easements through the different land management areas where we don't have easements yet. So is there anything that you see that we need to be aware of on that?
Not that I've seen so far, but we're looking further into that and fully recognize that we have a lot of different user groups for all of these sections of the trails, motorized and non-motorized as well. So
and then also in that it parallels the railroad and the highway. If there's any monies that could also be opened up for the railroad and for the highway for access points for trailheads, and then also for whistle stops for the railroad, that would be greatly appreciated. And then we do have the 100th anniversary of the Alaska Railroad coming up here in a few short years. And it would be nice to maybe tie that into the anniversary of the railroad, because the trail basically follows the route pioneered by the railroad, 100 years ago.
Definitely. And I'll be following up with you on that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Well, on the question of motorized use for the National Scenic Trail, we've had multiple conversations with senior NPS, National Park Service staff, and we've looked at the Trails Act language, and the motorized use seems to be possible depending on the land manager's decision. So in a nutshell, it doesn't look like the National Scenic Designation, Trail Designation prevents motorized use. If that's, yeah.
So Mariam, are you asking for questions at this point?
Yeah.
So I would ask, maybe go back to Tim Sharnan and your description of how helpful it was to organize multiple partners to be engaged in the Iditarod Trail, it occurs to me that something in that spirit, but I need your help in defining what that is, could be very helpful for the Long Trail. Was there, in the case of the Iditarod, an explicit sort of, I don't know, memorandum of understanding between, say, DOT and the Forest Service that set the stage for the investments? What was kind of the framework that we might learn from and perhaps pursue for the Long Trail?
The framework, Chris, was interagency, and it came in 1986. That was when a number of agencies signed off on the comprehensive plan. And there was, I highlighted the state of Alaska, the BLM, the Forest Service, as well as a number of municipalities were signatories to that. And that document, it still serves us to this day by giving those goalposts, those running lights. And it helps us as an agency prioritize investments, and it helps us obtain capital investment dollars when we can show that there are multiple agencies supporting and benefiting from it. So the comprehensive document is a great thing for any person on this call to take a look at as a model. I think right now that might be, my sense of it is that might be a goal to shoot for, because it is, I think there's probably more work that needs to happen collaboratively between their respective agencies on some of the questions that Miriam laid out really well. I think we need to focus on feasibility, on location, some of the things that are what Carly Besh highlighted potentially in the Alaska Trails Act. But a MOU or a memorandum of agreement on working towards feasibility, on working towards location, on identifying mutual benefits to the agencies, and highlighting, as Ricky did and Tom Begich did, about some of the benefits of doing so. I think that would be an outstanding first step at an interagency agreement. Not quite a comprehensive plan, but a framework for agreeing to the vision.
And I'm going to take this chance to give us a 5-minute warning. Thanks to our presenters and a really well-run panel, Mariam. We really appreciate everybody's input and continued input on the Long Trail. So I just wanted to say on behalf of Alaska Trails, thanks for everybody for taking the time, not just today, but prior to today. And thank you for all your involvement in the future on the Alaska Long Trail. It's truly not a sprint, but a marathon. And so I'll turn it back over to Mariam to finish up and then let us know what's going to happen into the future from here for the Long Trail planning and any other things you'd like to highlight.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. So the next steps right now are working, well, the first step is working with our task force group, which is our key partners along the trail. Some of you presented today from your region, and working on the shared vision and mission document that Wes outlined the need for that. So that should happen in the next month or two, well, we're hoping. And then the regional work would start out as well this winter. And again, we're inviting everybody who is interested in contributing to planning, thinking through the use questions, seasonality questions for their segment, for the segments in their region. It doesn't have to be a full-on, 40-hour-a-week commitment, but if you have thoughts and ideas, please join this work. And this should happen. Well, I posted the link for expressing your interest for working in your region in the chat. And you can always reach us at our website, if you have interest, if you have questions, comments, send us an email. And yeah, so the next steps are the deep dive into planning and thinking through all these questions. Very exciting.
Great. Well, thanks again to Senator Begich and Carly Besh of Senator Murkowski's office for the updates. As Carly mentioned, her colleague Aaron Thiel will be giving a presentation during the funding panel on infrastructure bill and other exciting federal projects. So that's coming up after lunch, but we've got our lunchtime keynote coming up at 12:15, and very excited to learn from the White Mountains Trail Collective. And then of course the funding panel at 1 and project updates at after that. Mariam, any final thoughts from you? I know Carly was nice enough to share her email in the chat as well, and you have the link to the form people can use to signify their interest. Any other final thoughts?
No, I will quickly post the link to the web page on our website. I forgot to do that earlier, but this is where you can find more information about the Long Trail. I post the link in the chat.
Great. Well, thanks everybody.
Chris, you have something to add?
I was just going to say, we met with some of the people who were instrumental in the current management of the Continental Divide Trail, Appalachian Trail, and those plus the Pacific Crest Trail are in the neighborhood of 100-year-old efforts. And I think they were impressed, and I guess I'm impressed and pleased by how much progress we've made right out of the gate. We're, at times it's a little daunting to think about the scale of challenges, the cost of all these trails, but it seems like this whole process is getting an amazing amount of traction in Alaska. So thanks to everybody who's contributed to that. And anytime I'm thinking, oh man, this is a long way to go, I think, we're after a year kind of where the Appalachian Trail was after their first 40 years. So that's exciting. So
it is exciting, and a lot of that is due to Chris's hard work. As I think a lot of you know, he's been volunteering his time almost full-time as a volunteer for the last couple of years for Alaska Trails, the Trails Initiative, and the Long Trails. So we're really pleased and lucky to have that. So a lot of this is borne out by his hard work, and that's a good way for us to close today, even though I know he's going to have the last word. So go ahead.
It's teamwork. Thanks.
Teamwork makes the dream work. See you at 12:15, everybody. Thanks again.
Thank you all.